writing and psychology, a new domain of the latter field was coming into being. Emerging out of humanistic psychology, positive psychology is the study of well-being, happiness, and positivity. I devoured popular press books on the topic because I wanted to thrive, I wanted to be happy, and I often didn't feel like I was thriving or was happy. I tried to check things off a happiness list. I made goals to foster strong relationships, engage in enjoyable hobbies, find meaningful work, and I did that. But I still felt anxious, unsettled at times. The problem wasn't entirely inside of me. The problem was more sociological than psychological. The problem was that increasingly I was learning that the world, our country, was not designed for my happiness. It wasn't really designed for most people's happiness, and those with the most power and privilege fight to keep the system as it is. And the last 4 years have been particularly illustrative of that point. The last 4 years have been trying, frightening, heartbreaking, and 2020 in particular has been a real challenge to live through. Perhaps some of you have felt this way too. This summer, I had a telemedicine appointment with a nurse practitioner, my annual physical, though there wasn't really much physical about it. At my PCP's office, they always have you complete a mental health screening before your appointment. And apparently, my life was not sparking enough joy when I filled mine out. And this poor NP asked me if I was okay, if I was depressed. And my honest answer, with my newborn in my arms, born during a global pandemic under a federal administration that does not care about my happiness, my honest answer was, well, isn't everyone depressed right now? Perhaps some of you feel this way too. I do feel different today. I can't tell you that the negative feelings of the past 4 years, and especially this year, are gone. I don't think they can be. I don't think they will be gone for a while, if ever. And like we heard in worship, no matter which politicians are in charge, we have work to do as Unitarian Universalists. But I feel different today. I feel relief, gratitude, hope. I'll let Black journalist Van Jones, again, explain why. It's easier to be a parent today, he said. It's easier to tell your kids that character matters. It matters. Telling the truth matters. Being a good person matters. And it's easier for a whole lot of people today. If you're Muslim in this country, you don't have to worry that the president doesn't want you here. If you're an immigrant, you don't have to worry that the president's going to be happier to have your baby snatched away or send dreamers back for no reason. It's a vindication for a lot of people who have really suffered. You know, I can't breathe. That wasn't just George Floyd. That's a lot of people that felt they couldn't breathe. Every day you're waking up to getting tweets and you just don't know. You're going to the store and people who have been afraid to show their racism are getting nastier and nastier to you. You're worried about your kids. You're worried about your sister. Can she just go to Walmart and get back to her car without somebody saying something to her? And you've spent so much of your life energy just trying to hold it together. And this is a big deal for us, to just be able to get some peace and have a chance for a reset. And the character of this country matters, and being a good person matters. It feels easier today to access my joy. And I want to invite you today to access your joy, especially if it's been hard to do so in the last 4 years. Modern Black author, doula, and activist Adrienne Maree Brown tells us, I am learning to be happy in most conditions. I am learning how to return to happiness even when journeying with grief, rage, and overwhelm. I am learning how to protect my happiness from those who can't find theirs and cultivate mutual happiness by sharing it when it seems to be in limited supply. My lessons involve a lot of the things you might guess: stillness, reflection, rest, boundaries, being able to feel, giving up numbness, escape, judgment, codependence, and often social media and the news. But more than any of these, it requires taking myself seriously, giving myself time to figure out how to be myself in any condition. The rest gets easier, comes when needed, doesn't require massive amounts of discipline or self-flagellation or sacrifice, just acceptance. My theory is the more individuals who can increase this acceptance of ourselves, of the cycle of our lives and connections of our conditions, the easier we can pull back the veil on how ridiculous a society we've ended up in. The more of us can pivot right now to living lives that are compelling to ourselves and future generations. Our joy, our happiness, our thriving is precious. We each deserve to have it protected and to have space to cultivate it. We each deserve to have the space for healthy coping and thriving in stillness, reflection, and emotional openness. The 30th Psalm of the Jewish scriptures is called Thanksgiving in recovery from a grave illness. It tells us, weeping may linger for the night, but joy comes in the morning. On this morning, may we each take a brief and needed rest in our relief and joy, and may we recharge for whatever is coming next. Blessed be, and amen.
Euro-American author and conservationist Terry Tempest Williams writes in an essay in the collection Red, Passion and Patience in the Desert, called Strike Moment. Chema Meadows is a Spanish artist who used the simple matchstick as his Ars Poetica. He calls his installation mixtos, or matches. I absorb his images. A spent match is resting horizontally against the background of wood where a knot in the grain resembles a flame. The match reignites. A half circle of matchsticks splayed against a horizon becomes the rising sun. A full circle of matchsticks is the full sun. The lead of a pencil is replaced with the head of a match. What is it that ignites an artist's soul or a writer's hand? What is responsible for that strike moment where the match and a band of sandpaper unite in a friction that produces flame? The strike moment of the artist creates the moment of illumination for the viewer. And democracy is full of strike moments, when injustice rubs against justice and a flame is carried by a person, a community, who lights a path of right action in the name of social change. Burning passion, a slow burn, coals, smoke. On our hands and knees, we blow the embers back to light. How close must we get to the source that burns in order to singe our souls into action? A book of matches, each turn of a page, strike moment. A fire in the mind believing it is possible to read or paint the world differently. Strike the match, stare into the flame, dare to be burned by the heat of our own ambitious hearts. End quote. I wrote about this passage by Terry Tempest Williams when I applied to seminary. I was thinking about taking 2 or 3 years off to do community organizing before going back to grad school, but in the fall of 2017, decided to change that timeline a little bit and apply instead just months after I'd graduated from college. I explained a little bit about that change of heart in my application essays. I wrote, this season, the fall of 2017, our nation and our neighbors have been ravaged by our seas swelling unforgivingly and our earth shaking uncontrollably. Harvey, Irma, Maria, an 8.1 magnitude earthquake and a 7.1 only 600 miles apart. And as power is slowly being restored, foundations rebuilt, and lives equilibrated, more is at risk. Sanctuary for our country's beloved and courageous dreamers, the protected status of our national monuments, the promise of universal healthcare. It is hard to rise up from the dust and debris of a single tragedy, but to rise up as a community and a nation from blow after blow after blow is a challenge unlike any I have ever known. Yet, I have been witness to an influx of strike moments and strike people who counter injustice or tragedy with justice and hope. News networks rallying around relief efforts, AmeriCorps teams heading south to the sites of recovery, petitions, letters, and humble acts of protest and activism, senators preparing to run down the clock, sleepless nights, political courage, radical empathy, the transmission of stories that dissolve barriers and move people of different skin colors, creeds, and histories. Like matches against sandpaper, these strike people stand in their truths, blow after blow, and they call me to ministry. Why, you might ask? Because I believe that the only thing louder than the rumbles of an earthquake of a heartbreaking 8.1 magnitude are the anthems and hymns of the relief. And because I believe that we, as Unitarian Universalists, are in the service of hope, relief, and stamina. End quote. I share this with you this morning, not just because we've come pretty full circle since I was first applying to seminary, but because when we read Terry Tempest Williams' words, democracy is full of strike moments, when injustice rubs against justice and a flame is carried. It's easy to see those strike moments in big victories and big sea changes, and major legislation passed, Supreme Court decisions, peace treaties, and the things outside of our control or outside of our hands. But upon a closer look, this passage evokes some additional imagery. It reminds me of the rituals of our UU worship services. We use a matchstick, a bigger one than this, and sandpaper to light a taper which ultimately lights our chalice. Our chalice serves in our UU faith as the heart and hearth of our worship services. At some point in the service, we take another taper, lit from the chalice, down to the sandbox, and use that candle to light the others around it. On Christmas Eve, that ritual is magnified 50-fold. One candle lights 3 more, and each of those 3 more after that. When I think about the power of the image of a candle lighting another candle and then another, I begin to see social justice as a far more democratic and quiet process than I think I ever understood before. And we, every single one of us, as an important part of it. Whether it's on a day we're showing up at the polls to vote or not, all of us labor every day to keep our candles well lit, to do right by others, and to advocate for the most marginalized among us. And that, I think, is what pushes the needle. As the first parish justice leaders said in the message in the YouTube service today, we are called still to carry out the work of justice in our communities and wider world, knowing that the power we each have might just be the difference between being a lone candle that helps someone else find their way into the work. May it be so, and amen.